In this video, let's have an overview of what is Claude and 4 different ways of interacting with it. All right. So what is Claude? Claude itself is a tool from a company called Anthropic. All right. Now, Anthropic has these frontier LLMs. Okay. So the 3 different offerings from them are Haiku, Sonnet, and Opus. All right. Haiku is their smallest model, which is fastest to iterate with, and then they have Sonnet, which is their mid-level model, and Opus, which is like their gigantic model. All right. So this is the most intelligent when it comes to reasoning and deep research and so on. And Haiku can perform quick iterations and quick chats. All right. So all 3 of them are intelligent. All right. So all of these 3 LLMs are intelligent, and we can get a lot done with them. Now, what makes Claude special is these LLMs. Okay, so we can just put them inside one box. So, be it Haiku, Sonnet, or Opus, you can choose, any of them. The LLM has access to tools. All right, so that's what makes this Claude special. That's the magic essentially. The LLMs, the intelligence having access to tools. Tools could be like software applications and scripts, and they can take action. They can have access to your Chrome browser, and they could have access to creating files on disk, reading files on disk, right? So these are already tools that are available, the command line tools and so on. They are already there in computers, right? So Claude essentially marries the LLM with tools. Okay, so it's no longer humans who are using those tools. It's the LLM which uses the tools based on context, based on its judgment. All right. So the way this works is we as humans provide input. Okay, so let me change color. So we as humans provide input text, and this text is the text is tokenized. Okay, for the LLMs to understand, but for our understanding, we'll just say we give input text, okay, to the LLM. The LLM does something with it. Okay, so it does some kind of a processing with text, and based on its judgment, if needed, let's say if we say create a file on disk which has like the word hello world. Okay, so now since the LLM understands what we say, it will make use of some command line tools to create a text file and write to it the words hello world. Okay, so and then after it finished doing that work for us, the LLM understands that the work is completed, right? Because the tool returns like an success message back to the LLM to indicate that it has finished doing whatever the LLM wanted it to do. And then the LLM informs us that the work is done, right? So by means of giving us an output text. Now the thing is, now what I explained was like a single step process, right? But many times this might not be just a single step process. We might ask it to do something more complex. Maybe like, we can ask it to go research something online. Like maybe we can ask it to create a script for a sci-fi fairy tale, right? So we can ask it to research some different open source stories that are online. So it will make use of a different tool. It could make use of tool 1, which goes online and finds things, and then it can then make use of another tool to like basically come up with a script, and it can use tool number 3 to write whatever script it has come up with to a file, and then it can inform us. Now the thing is, as it's easy using each of these tools, it will keep informing us. As a matter of fact, we will see that when we use these, you use Claude, as it uses the first tool, it will let us know that it has used the first tool. Then, it does something else. It makes use of second tool, and it will tell us that, it will notify us that, that the second tool is being used, and so on. So that's basically called the agentic loop. Basically, this happens, at least the output text and then the LLM doing something with tools and the tool giving us something back and then that getting notified to us. This happens in a loop until whatever we asked gets satisfied. And then we can, in fact, after it finishes doing its thing, we can give it follow-up commands as additional input text, right? So this is essentially how, the Claude tool itself is set up for us to use it. Okay, cool. Now, with this understanding, let's see the different ways in which we can interact with Claude. Okay, now there are primarily these 4 different ways we interact with Claude. There are a lot more ways. Claude keeps on coming up with different extensions and plugins for us to use Claude in different apps like PowerPoint and Excel and so on. So here, at least in this presentation, we're just going to focus on these 4 different interfaces: the Claude.ai web interface, the Claude desktop application, the Claude Code terminal application, and the Claude Code VS Code plugin. All right. So let me start with the Claude.ai web interface. All right. So let me open it up. So here we can just just as how we go to any other website, we can just say Claude.ai and it takes us to this web interface of Claude. All right. So there we are presented with 3 different ways of interacting with it. Now, under the hood, it's still using just this mechanism, this Claude, right? Now, the thing that changes is the tools. The tool that, the interface has access to is basically the flavoring. All the interfaces that we see here, right? All the 4 interfaces, the web interface, the desktop interface, the terminal interface, and even the VS Code plugin, they are all using same Claude. Okay, it's all, this same mechanism. The thing that differs is this part, basically, let me clean this up a bit. It's basically the thing that differs is what tools are available for the LLM. So that defines the interface, as a matter of fact. So let's look at Claude.ai's web interface. Over here, we have the chat interface. And in the chat interface itself, we can just say, hello, how are you? All right. So if you just ask it, it will respond to us. This is the input text that we were talking about. So here, this input text, hello, how are you? We gave it and it went into the LLM. And in this scenario, it didn't need any tool, right? So it just responded back by giving us output text, which is, hi, Maria, doing well, thanks. How can I help, right? So, but the thing is, this web interface itself, let me zoom in a bit. So this web interface itself, we can make it use certain tools that are available online. All right. So this web interface can make use of tools that are available in the cloud, that is like, online. So the way you enable those tool access is by means of clicking on this. Okay. By default, even the web interface of Claude will come with, some default set of tools that it can use, but you can add additional tools. So the way you do that is by means of maybe setting up connectors. So here you see Gmail. I have set up my Gmail to be accessible by the Claude web interface and even my Google Drive. So for example, if I just ask how many unread emails do I have that has been sent to me in the last 1 week. All right, so if I just ask this, what's going to happen is this input text went into the LLM and LLM understands that now it needs to make use of a tool, right? It is intelligent that enough to understand that since I've asked about emails, it is like going into Gmail tool use. See, it says loaded tools, use Gmail integration, right? So because of that, it went over here, it made use of that Gmail tool, right? And through that, it's able to understand that there are about maybe some 100 email threads in the past week. Okay, that's quite a lot. And it is returning that information back to us. And so it even says you have about 222 messages and so on. So, basically it's able to make use of that tool to return back to us the information that we want as output text. And the thing is, as it's making use of the tool, like in Gmail, when I said I have connected my Gmail to this Claude chat, the Gmail connection comes with a bunch of tools, and as it's using different tools, it's just giving us all these updates, right? So, and that is that loop that I was talking about. It gives us this output, it does its things, go back and access another tool based on where it's heading, and gets the job done for us. Now we can write a follow-up and ask it to even respond to certain emails on our behalf, right? Because I have that connection set up. But that's essentially what this web interface offers us. This chat interface is there for us to talk with Claude, brainstorm ideas, and even enable it to access some online tools, right? The tools that are available in the cloud, in the web. Along with this, so that's basically the chat interface of the web app. And then you also have coding capabilities available here. So here, like if you click on this code, so this again is not code that you write in your computer, right? So this is not your desktop. It's basically all happening in the cloud. So you can connect your GitHub, and you can actually ask Claude to build a software directly in its cloud space, and even execute it, debug it, and even like launch it. All right, so you can do all of that directly here. So that's basically what this Claude Code web interface offers. It's still in research preview. So if you're writing code, I would suggest you directly either use the terminal interface or the VS Code plugin in your, or even like the desktop application. But this is a viable option. We can still write our software using just the web interface. All right, so that's the second option. And then along with this, we also have something called design. Okay, so if you click on this is relatively a new feature. Here you can create some wireframes and like some front-end designs and slide decks, and you can even give some design system. You can build a design system of the theme that you want your app to be in, and you can create all marketing material using slide deck and all and so on. So this is also something that you can do. Now the thing is, here again, when you use Claude Design, that is also making use of the same mechanism. It's all the same thing, right? This LLM, Haiku, Sonnet, and Opus. I believe design by default just uses Opus with the largest model. But it then has access to these tools that help you to do design, right? Do design UI work, right? So that's essentially what this Claude Design offers. For example, let's just even ask it to create a slide deck on Claude, and let's ask it to create. Here again, we are presented with this chat interface to talk with Claude, and we can just say, create 2 slides that give an overview of the different interfaces that we have for Claude. Right, so now the thing is, since we are still talking with Opus, see the intelligence is here, right? So it can do all the research for us. It can find things online. We just asked it to, we didn't even say what all we want to be present in the slide. We just said, make 2 slides that give an overview of different interfaces that Claude has, right? And now the thing is, it goes ahead and builds the thing for us. Now the thing is, the specialty about Claude is the model is trained to write code. It is really good at writing code, and that is what is enabling it to do all of this. Okay, so when you say the LLM has access to tools, what is a tool? It's basically code, right? Like a piece of software that it gets access to, and through software it is doing all of this. It's controlling the Chrome browser, your computer, and creating files, writing files, all of that is being done through code. It is writing code on your behalf, all right? So even here for this presentation, you can see that it is actually writing a JavaScript file to create this slide deck. And here you have it. It has already created the 2 slides. It's still working on it, but we can actually present it in this tab and see the 2 slides. See, it just built this these 2 slides for us. It did the research on our behalf and created this slide. It shows us that we can access through the web app, the desktop app, mobile app, Claude code, APIs, SDKs, integrations, all these different mechanisms. It even shows you all the different, where each of these interfaces are best for, all right? So that's really powerful, right? So this Claude design, has access to building these UI designs through the tools that it has access to. That's the differentiator between all these different products that is available for us. So yes, so that's design. Now let's move on to the Claude desktop app. Okay, you can download and install the desktop application from the Anthropic website. The desktop application also provides us the chat interface. Along with that, it provides us the co-work and code mode. All right, so it's got these 3 modes that are super powerful. So you have the chat, co-work, and code. Okay, let's have an overview of each of them. The chat. So the chat is essentially the same thing that we see online, right? So the same chat interface that you find online is what you have here. But the cool thing with the chat that you have on your desktop, the main differentiator between the chat that is available online and the chat that is available in your desktop app is the tool access. So here, if you click on that plus button, we can connect it to local tools. For example, I have Blender in my machine, and by means of using this MCP mechanism, we can connect. So that's essentially how tools are connected to Claude, okay, using MCP. Now, in the online interface, I have access to only the tools that are available online, right? Like the Gmail and Google Drive and all the other different tools that are just available, hosted and available online. But with my desktop application, you can see that I can connect to local tools. For example, Blender that is just installed in my machine, and I can even create other local tools and connect it to this chat, and I can interact with Blender through this chat. So that's quite super powerful, right? So making use of Claude in your desktop app helps you to localize your workflows. So it's really powerful. Then you have the co-work mode, right? So this is powerful. Okay, so the co-work actually gets stuff done for you, right? So chat is primarily for brainstorming and talking with this intelligence, all right? So this intelligence, yes, it can do stuff for you. Yes, it can, do stuff for you by the tool access it has. But co-work, what makes it special is you can ask it to create files and PDFs and rearrange the files in your desktop or downloads folder, or you can actually ask it to do things on your computer through co-work. So that's what makes co-work special. For example, let's just maybe I'll choose a folder, give Claude access to that folder. So I'll just go and select one folder right now. So here I have a sandbox folder. So I've just selected a sandbox folder, and I'm just going to say I want to allow this Claude to manipulate and do things in that folder. Okay, this here it is, right? So here I'm going to say act without asking. I'm just going to allow it to do things for me. So I'll just say yes, continue. So yeah, just be cautious of this, but for our demonstration purposes, this is totally fine. So I'm going to say create a hello world Python application, and I also want to have a launcher that I can just double click and make the application run. I've just asked co-work to create a Python script for me, right? So it's just a simple hello world Python program. If you look at that folder that we have given access to Claude, let me open it up. See, it is already created those files for me in that location, And now if I double click, it even created that launcher for me. So if I double click on this, you can see it actually prints hello world for me, right? So that's pretty cool. So that's essentially what co-work allows you to do. That's just like, I'm just scratching the surface of what this co-work can do. So it has access to running commands on your machine, right? It is actually creating files on your system, right? So that's what makes co-work special. And then you have the code mode, okay? So that's the third mode that you have in your desktop application. We already covered chat and co-work. Now we're going to talk about code, okay? So this code mode is basically used to actually develop software. And Claude is very good in creating software, okay? So here you can actually here again, I can give it a particular folder. I'll just open a folder quickly here. Here again, you can ask it to write, come up with a plan to build some really sophisticated software for you. The difference between co-work, so co-work is mainly for non-technical people to do automations and to basically allow Claude to do computer use, to use your computer on your behalf for non-technical people, right? Whereas code is more for software engineers and people who want to essentially build software. So here you can see that you have all these different modes available for you. You have this plan mode to come up with a plan for your software. You can design some applications along with Claude. It won't start building things in plan mode. It'll just come up with a plan and create some markdown files for you. And then once you're happy, you can set it to be either in auto mode or some other mode and ask it to build things for you. So for example, let's just ask it to, we are in the plan mode and we'll say, come up with a plan to create a hello world application with pie side. I want to have a nice pie side widget which has a button. When I click on that button, it should say, it should have a nice pop-up that says hello world. All right. So I've just described what I want, and I'm just I'm in plan mode. I'm just trusting this workspace. And now what you will be able to observe is on that particular directory. So you can see that it is not writing any files to it as of now. It's just coming up with a plan. Okay, so it's coming up with this plan to build this piece of software for us. So it's basically triaging and finding out what are all the different tools that are available. It says Python 3 is available and PySide 6 is also available. So it's now coming up with a plan, and you can see here that it has in fact come up with a plan and it's showing us this plan over here. Okay, so we can go over it and see what exactly it's planning to do. We can even comment on it and refine the plan, ask it to make changes and so on, and this is where it's going to create that file and so on. So it's even showing us a bit of a code of how exactly it's going to build this. Okay, so if you're happy with this, all you need to do is come here and say accept and auto mode, right? So we'll actually even change it to bypass permissions. Okay, so yeah, just use bypass permissions with caution. So here we have accepted the plan and asked it to build it. Okay, so here if you see, it's slowly going to start creating files for us. See, it's created that hello world.py file, and it's building that piece of software for us right now. So that's what makes code special. You have access to these additional harnessing mechanisms, basically the different modes that are there, and this is highly fine-tuned to building software. So here we can see that it has created the .py file, but we want to have a launcher. We can ask it to actually build it. So we'll say create a launcher for me to launch the application. So now if you look at this, probably it's going to create a bat file that we can use to just launch it. See, it's added the launch file. Cool. So if we just double click on this, perfect. So we have our application running. So if we click on this button, so it's greeting us saying hello world with a pop-up, right? So that's exactly what we asked, and it says built this for us. So that's the power of code, the code tab. Okay, so the desktop version of Claude is super versatile. You can actually do chat, you can do co-work, and also you can build software all in your machine, right? So this is super useful. So that's basically what this second interface is all about, the Claude desktop app. So now let's look at the Claude Code terminal interface and see what it offers. Okay, so I have my Windows PowerShell. I'm using a Windows OS, so this is a Windows PowerShell. So here I'll just say Claude to enter into that Claude application. Okay, so here we are. All right, so this is our Claude application running on our terminal. Now the significance of the terminal is all the latest features ship here first. So if you want to use the latest and greatest Claude functionalities, this is where you need to be. All right, so and this terminal, we have opened it in this particular directory, sandbox 5. Okay, one thing I found quirky, at least in Windows, is I'm not able to use my like a voice tool. I make use of this tool called Whisper, which allows me to just transcribe my voice as text. But in Windows, at least, I'm not able to transcribe. I'm not able to use a tool to like write text here. So if I say, "Hello, check 1 2 3." See, it doesn't register here, right? So the way I use Claude Code terminal in Windows is by means of using it directly inside of VS Code. Okay, so let me open it up and open up Claude Code inside of VS Code running on a terminal, right? So here we have VS Code. Over here, let's open up the terminal. And it's essentially the same thing. It's basically PowerShell running here inside of VS Code. And over here, we'll say Claude. We'll enter into Claude. And now in this, it's essentially the same thing. Okay, so here we have PowerShell and we entered into the Claude application. We're doing the same thing, but with a PowerShell terminal inside of VS Code. There, I'm able to talk with and use Whisper essentially. So I can say, what all files do you see in this folder? See, now it's actually like, my text is getting written for me as I speak. So that's something that I found. It's a quirk. Probably this issue is not there in Mac, but in Windows it is there. So it's actually seeing these two files. Now this is similar to the code interface that we saw in the desktop app. Okay, but as I said earlier, the terminal interface is where the latest features land first. Okay, so here again, you can toggle through the different modes of communicating with Claude by pressing Shift Tab. See, right now, by toggling, you can see we have this plan mode. So with the plan mode, you can discuss about your code. I have a simple Hello World application over here. I wanted to make it interesting. I want some interesting, funky UI elements in the application. Come up with a plan to make this funky. See, I'm just giving some very abstract terms and let's see what Claude comes up with when we say funky. So here again, it's just coming up with a plan, right? So it's not like actually going to build anything. It's going to come up with a plan and get our approval, and once we approve it, it's actually going to build it. So this is the terminal interface that we see running right now inside of VS Code. So let's ask some questions whether we wanted to be a terminal, animated terminal, or rich GUI, or browser based. Let's just make it interesting in the terminal itself, because this is the first app that we built directly on the terminal. So it even asks us some what vibe we want: retro or rainbow party, hacker, matrix, surprise me. Okay, maybe let's just go retro on this. So let's go here and say retro, and yeah, let's submit the answers. So again, it's still coming up with the plan. It's not yet building the application for us. Cool, it has come up with a plan. It's showing us all the different things that it's going to do. So we'll just approve it and let it build it for us. All right, let's finish building the application. Let's run it and see. So it's a terminal application. So look, it's, doing all these funky things. See, it just did this for us. Let me run it again. I'll just make it bigger and I'll run this. It's pretty funky. It's pretty cool. So let's double click on this and see, it's animating the terminal for us. This is so cool. So yeah, so that's basically Claude Code working directly in the terminal inside of VS Code. And finally, let's just quickly touch upon the Claude Code VS Code plugin. So here, you just need to install it as an extension, VS Code extension. Just search for Claude, and you can find the Claude Code extension. Make sure it's from Anthropic. And once you install it, you can just create a new session out of it. and here you have Claude Code as a VS Code plugin. Okay, so I use this quite a bit mainly because I can, let's say for example, if I like go to a particular code file, I can maybe select a bunch of lines. Let me open up another Claude. See, since I selected these lines, it's aware of the lines I selected. There's a way to do this also in the terminal, but I find this a bit more intuitive. I use the VS Code Claude extension quite a bit. So yeah, so this is basically, you can do the same things, whatever you did with the terminal over here as well. So you can actually, like, here again, you have the bypass permissions, a plan mode, and all these different modes. Like this again, you can use shift tab to toggle between the different modes that it provides. And over here, see, and yeah, like you can again add a lot of context to this chat, and you can browse the web, and you can the cool thing about Claude Code, the terminal, and the VS Code extension is by pressing this slash, you have a lot of cool options that it provides. And in the terminal version also, you can just like press the slash key and get access to all the different options that it provides. So yeah, so this is that other interface that we wanted to touch upon. Now, all of these 4 interfaces, be it the Claude AI the web interface, or the desktop application, or the terminal, or the VS Code plugin, they're all doing the same thing. Okay, it's all having the same agentic loop. It takes input text as tokens, and then it does its thing. The intelligence is available by means of the different models that you select. And since it has access to tools, and depending on the tool access, you have these different interfaces, right? Like depending on the tool access, you have different products, essentially, right? So that's essentially what is happening right now, right? Like, and then it does some work for you by means of the tools, and then finally it gives you the output, saying that it has done the work for you. So this essentially is an overview of what Claude is, and these 4 different interfaces, 4 different ways in which you can interact with Claude. Hope this session was useful. Follow along if you're exploring AI for your VFX and animation pipelines.